Hello class, for this tutorial we will work through exercise 1 at the end of chapter 8. So we're going to go to a new template, take your pick. For the English templates I'm going to do ACAD 3D, and as soon as this loads type in units in the command line and hit enter, and we're going to change this to decimal inches with a precision of thousandths this time, and apply and OK. Alright, so I can either do rectangles and extrude or boxes, and I'm going to make this in probably two objects that I'll union together. I think I'll start just with the box. So BOX, specify first corner, and remember you've got to have your O-snap and ortho on, so I'm going to say length, and it defaults away, so hit F8 again to lock that in. So length is 3, enter, width is 3, enter, height is 0.375. So there we have, I'm going to zoom in with my scroll wheel and pan by pushing down on that scroll wheel. We have our base. Now next we have the side, and this is kind of an odd shape, so the easier way to do it is to draw a series of lines, make it a region, and extrude it. So I'm just going to pan, so I'm looking more at the left view, and I think what I'll do is change my UCS. If you see right now my UCS is laying flat. If I type in UCS, enter, X, enter, and then 90, it rotates my UCS 90 degrees, so Y is pointing straight up. So in other words, my 2D plane, you can see the grid changed. My 2D plane is vertical now. Not critical, but that'll make things a little bit easier when we go to extrude. So I'm going to start a line again. And what I'm going to do, sorry, this is in perspective view and it's a little bit cumbersome. I'm going to start on the right corner and go down. And if you do your subtraction, that shape is 0.625 down. Now I'm going to go left 3. I'm going to be careful that I'm going straight up here. Straight up will be 1.125, I believe. Now we have an angle, and this looks like it's 45 degrees. But instead of drawing that, I'm going to go straight up another 1, and then go right 1, and then connect the dots. So that's the same difference that creates our 45-degree angle. So the perspective view is kind of bothering me because I'm not used to it. So if you right-click on your view cube and go back to parallel, that's a little bit more what we're used to as far as a drafting view. So to finish this out, they don't tell us how wide the top flat is, so we have to draw another line from here. And I'm going to do a top view, so I'm totally flat when I draw this. So I went back into 2D. And I'm going to go shift at, I'm just going to pick a length of like 6 inches at an angle of, that would be 135. So in 2D I just made a construction line shooting off at that angle. Now if I draw a line straight across here, that's going to define the flat top accurately, so I can go in and delete these two construction lines, TR, enter, trim away those two lines. So this is our actual profile of that shape, and now I can go back to my isometric view by using that view cube. That's the wrong one. I'm going to orbit around a little bit here. That looks a little bit better. Alright. So to get this into a 3D shape, I need to extrude it, but I can't extrude it unless it's a complete loop of lines. So I'm going to use the region command, pick my objects, and that turns it into a plane that I can extrude. So type in extrude, pick that region, and then drag your cursor off in the direction you want it to extrude, and then it needs to be 2 inches in length. Now what I can do is take this whole object that I've created and move it from the midpoint of that bottom plane to the midpoint of my base, and there we have our base or our root object. Now our next thing is to create a cylinder that we can use to drill a hole through this object. So we're going to use the UCS face. So UCS enter, face enter. And then we're going to click on this 45-degree face. And I don't think it went right. UCS face. UCS face. Pick that face. And then it says accept. So if I hit enter, that's what I forgot to do, it'll accept. So now that's UCS is directly on that face. We could have used UCS 3-point as well. Now we're going to draw a cylinder. Cylinder is the command. It says specify center point. So I'm going to pick, let's say, the bottom center of that plane. And I'm going to type in D for diameter, enter. And then the drawing says 1.5, enter. Now for height, I'm just going to drag that guy way out there. Something like that. I know it's too long of a drill bit, but so be it. Now move that. My UCS is still oriented with that face, so if I move it, it's going to move on that face with my ortho locked in, my F8. So I'm going to move it up the y-axis 1 inch to get it located correctly, and then I'm going to move it down the z-axis, which, there it is. Kind of difficult to get it to go and stick on that axis. Now before we subtract it, take an orbit around using the left click to hold, and that's where that hole is going to punch through. We can't see the back of the object in our textbook, but that's how it's going to go. So two things I'm going to do. First is a union of my two base objects, which I should have done previously. Enter, so they're all one. Then a subtract, my base object, enter, my cylinder, enter, and we delete it out. So if I orbit around, you can see the through hole. Now once we're done doing this, UCS enter, enter, resets it to the world. I don't like that grid, turn the grid off. So we completely have our object, and we're ready to do part 2, which is the multi-view drawings in paper space. So I'm going to take a look into layout number 1, and this is a paper tab. We already have one viewport here. So what I'm going to do is kind of stretch this viewport so it's roughly a quarter of the way. Double click, and then if you double click your scroll wheel, that's the same as zoom extents, and it brings in your object. Then double click away to deactivate. So that's a viewport. Now if I copy that viewport from corner to corner, looks like I need to resize it before I do. We can also stretch these. If I do the stretch command and just grab a corner, these stay a rectangle. Stretch them up a little bit. Double click your scroll wheel in that viewport. There we go. Now I can copy this corner to corner, and then copy again corner to corner. And as you might expect, in here, in this view here, we do the top, and it's kind of hard to see, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So double click in the viewport to activate it, and then hit the top, and that gives us a top view, which I don't think I clicked top. There, top view. And it's rotated a little bit goofy, so I can't see well enough to see my rotate button, but there's a button in here to rotate if you want to, but that's top. Next, double click in this one, and we want front, which is actually side in this case. Front, side. That looks better. So we have top view, front view, and then over here we should have side view. So I got to zoom in a little bit more. Now if I was to zoom when I'm in the viewport, it changes my scale. So double click your scroll wheel and then come up here and pick your side. So not that one, that one. So here we have top view, front view, side view, and then our multi-view. Now your textbook does walk through how to do the, I think the command was solid or solprof to create a 2D line work from your object so you can see hidden lines. We're not going to bother with that in this case. But we do want these things to be as close to scale as possible. So to play around with scale, if you select your viewports, you can do them all at once. Down at the lower right, we have scale right here, and it says varies right now. But we'll try a 1-to-1 scale, which is full scale. And that's actually going to work. So each of those is 1-to-1. That means they're life size once we print on the paper, but they move just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is hit escape and double click in this top viewport, and without scrolling I'm just going to drag that up, and then double click in this viewport, and without scrolling just drag it up, pushing on the scroll wheel, dragging up so it's completely in the viewport, like so. So now we're fairly well laid out. I think it looks real good. Pick all of the viewports, and then you're going to hit the padlock, which is right here in the viewport little toolbar. Now when I lock the viewport, if I come in and double click and scroll, now it's not going to accidentally get out of scale. So step 1 is to make the viewport, step 2 is to get your objects in the viewports, step 3 is to scale them, and then step 4 is to lock. The other way to lock is to select, right click, and go to display locked, yes. So those are all locked in. Now our last thing to do before we complete this is to add our annotations, which would be dimensions and text. We're going to do this in paperspace, which works out the best. So go to your Annotate tab. On mine it's the third from the left up top, and we have what they call a standard dimension. They also have annotative. I'm going to use the annotative dimension and just use my standard linear dimension to add a few dimensions on here. So try that again. So we've got a width of 3, a height of 0.375, and then we can continue that dimension with the continue dimension button to hit a few of these other marks. Perhaps we'll put a width on here, and I'm not going to be real critical on what you dimension. The idea is that you have some practice dimensioning. And it's kind of interesting as I look at this view here, it actually, the way that I created that, it created an auxiliary view, which I did by accident, but when I hit top view it gave me an auxiliary view. So you're seeing a view perpendicular with this face, which is what we wanted. So on the auxiliary view we can add that dimension that we didn't have in the textbook, which is corner to corner. Oops, but I can't do it in the viewport, sorry. We're doing these dimensions in paperspace, so make sure you haven't activated your viewport by double clicking. So that's that odd dimension that we didn't know. And we can continue dimension. I don't think we will. We'll leave it just like that. That's the only dimension. Now when you are doing dimensions, you can see that some of these are going off the page. So what I can do is take and stretch just those two viewports over, and then use the move command to move them to the right, and that buys us some space, and then I can stretch these viewports completely over. And these dimensions are alive and active, so if I pick that text, I can grab a grip point and force it, closer wherever it makes sense, like so. And this one here may need to come out like so. So play around a bit with your dimensions. Actually, I moved the whole dimension there. So play around with your dimensions a little bit to get a feel for how things work, how you can modify, how you can stretch. I'm not going to say that there's a right or a wrong way here. Just take your time. And sometimes they can be a pain when you're manipulating to get them to do exactly what you want them to do. And we could do the same over in this view. But the key is don't double click and activate your viewport or you'll get frustrated. Leave the viewport unactivated, and when you do your dimensions, just go from corner to corner here in the paper space to add those guys in. Again, stretch this viewport over out of the way. So the rules for dimensions are don't double dimension. Dimension strings should all be in a row, should not cross one another, and give just enough information for the manufacturer to manufacture that part. So I already had this dimension on the auxiliary view, but I'm going to do an aligned dimension here just to see if they match. 2.1213, 2.1213, they match. So we dimensioned those correctly. And the only dimension I see we haven't given anywhere is this 0.5. And again, I can pick that, drag that to the other side so we're not overlapping. Perhaps an angle would be in order. We can do an angle by clicking two faces. We can go on the inside. We can go up on the outside. I'll probably do it this way on both sides. Click your two angles. We can go in, we can go up. We'll probably go up and then click once, take that grip point to move the text to the other side. So that is how we set up. If we were doing this for manufacturer, you'd put your name and some other text at a corner. So I may just do M text up here in the corner. And just type in exercise 8-1 or Voorhees and the date. Now to plot, just like we said before, Control P. While you're in paper space, you're going to pick your plotter, which in my case will be a PDF writer, DWG to PDF. It's already set on 8.5 by 11, but we need landscape, which it is set as landscape. Scale is 1:1. All should be good, so always click that preview. So in a preview, this is exactly what would be produced, which looks good. Now the only thing is my viewports are visible, and there's a way we could turn that layer off, but I won't bother in this case because that helps to provide separation between our drawings. And then we can plot. Pick a place where I want to put this and save it. And that's how we do exercise 8-1. Thank you for your time, and let me know if you have any questions.